Hello booktube, or anyone who's watching really. It's been a minute, it's been a while since I did a video. That's not because I haven't been reading, it's because I have been working a lot. And the book that I'm currently reading is a David Bren. It's chunky, I've been on it for about a week now, which is a long time for me in my reading habits. Video of that will be forthcoming, but for now, what I've got is a mini book haul, as the thumbnail suggests. Now, I know a lot of people are doing the Read What You Own November, or there's a Read What You Own 100 book challenge or something out there as well. I applaud them. I'm not doing that. Not a chance. For a start, Read What I Own is what I do 90% of the time anyway. I do a few library books and a few loans, but mostly it's things from my own bookshelves, not from other places. So it's not actually any different to what I normally do. Second, I seem to be one of the few people who mostly is a hunter-gatherer. I get books in the wild, as it's quaintly called, and I see a book, I need to get it then because that book may not exist in the future. Since classic SFF is most of what I get, and I like older books, I like secondhand books. I do buy the occasional new book, there's a few up there. Right behind, I need to coordinate this, there. Those ones, for example, brand new. But most of mine are secondhand, most of them are out of print. And so if I see a perfectly excellent George MacDonald on the shelf and I don't pick it up right then, that might be my only chance. So, Read What You Own, great concept, I do it year round. And this mini book haul is actually a combination of two. So I did a bit of a road trip up in the Northern Rivers area of New South Wales in the hinterlands. I went to Mullumbimby specifically because I knew there was meant to be a really good second-hand bookstore there. That's a Deb road trip, apparently. And there was. It's called the Book Barn. It's the old school, huge room that probably has never ever been vacuumed. It's owned by an old guy, and I think when the old guy stops doing the bookshelf, which he might one of these days, there will be no more bookshop there. All the books there are old, many of them aren't in great condition, but it's the sort of one you can browse and in which you can find gems. So, long before there were Disney princesses of any note, long before this whole princess trend happened, there was George MacDonald. George MacDonald is an English writer, I do believe. He wrote for adults, but I haven't actually read much of his adult books. Mostly I read his children's books. He wrote a couple that were really, really famous ones once, and they seem to have fallen into disregard, which I think is a shame. The Princess and the Goblin is one of the best fantasy type children's books I ever read as an adult. There's another one, The Princess and Curdie, and At the Back of the North Wind. He had 8 fairy stories which appear in this volume, which my breath kind of caught when I saw it because I hadn't heard of this one by MacDonald. Like I say, all of mine found in the wild. It's a Gollancz hardback. I don't normally like hardcover books, but I'll make an exception for George MacDonald and a few others. The dust jacket is in moderately good condition. The book underneath is in okay condition with some staining and foxing and stuff that you get from an aged book. I'm really looking forward to reading some MacDonald stories. I've only ever read his books, but before I get into that, I probably need to do some book cleaning. All that's a residue of just gunk, and I think that shows quite clearly that this book has been in that shop a long time. Very pleased for this. Oh yes, another thing about it is it has illustrations. The cover illustration is by, the jacket design is by John Donnet, an artist I believe that I've heard of before, though it doesn't spring to mind. And the illustrations inside by Arthur Hughes. Let me find one. They're really, really beautiful ink illustrations by Arthur Hughes. Arthur Hughes is another name that I've heard before. I can't remember off the top of my head. what other things he did, but I'm pretty sure that he had other illustrations of this nature for books. Quite gorgeous of their era artwork, I'm going to say. And from Arthur Hughes to Ted Hughes. This was from my second haul. Up in Brisbane, there's this marvellous bookshop. It is the bookshop, second-hand bookshop of all of our dreams. It is called Archives Rare Books. If you go to its catalogue and there's something you really want, it ships all over the world, the expensive ones. But on the shelf are an awful lot of paperbacks that basically aren't in any catalogue. And there I came across The Iron Woman by Ted Hughes. Ted Hughes was a British poet laureate from the 1980s. I think it might have been 1984, and he held that title to his death in 2000 and I believe 2008. I'm not a huge poetry reader, but Ted Hughes is probably one of my 2 or 3 most favoured modern poets. He writes things that are strange and evocative and feel almost mythological while you're reading them. I don't love everything by him that I've read, but on the balance, I love most of them. I didn't know that he actually had kids' books, but apparently there was one called The Iron Man, and this, The Iron Woman, is the sequel. Don't know if you can see on the cover, but these little screws have got texture and they silver at you, which is kind of cute. It's a young children's book. Younger than I would normally go for. The only reason I would get one like this is because it's got Ted Hughes' name on the cover. If Ted Hughes wrote it, I believe that it's probably going to be great. I love that illustration too. So the cover design is by Faber. It's a Faber book. It's a United Kingdom Faber book. The illustrations inside are by Andrew Davidson, and apparently, as a sequel to The Iron Man, which Ted Hughes also wrote, it's a powerful cry against the relentless pollution of the earth, which is certainly a theme that I'm probably going to be on board with. Again, with the illustrations, lovely black and white illustrations. Probably the McDonald one is one I could buy for the artwork, even if I didn't love the story. But I think the illustrations here, while delightful in their own right, are basically going to be good accompaniment to the story, which I haven't begun yet. Back to the Mullumbimmy book haul. Tanith Lee Heartbeast. I seem to be starting to get as many Tanith Lees. I seem to want to have the whole collection. I know I've read Heartbeast, and I believe that it's part of a series. And when I went to reread it recently, I found I didn't own it anymore. So I did borrow a lot of Tanith Lees from other people and from the library the first 2 or 3 times around I was reading them. Now I want my own because they're getting so hard to find. The library has virtually no Tanith Lees anymore. So Heartbeast, beautiful cover illustration. I am looking forward to rereading this. Cover illustration, by the way, is by Mark Selwowski. Probably Selwowski. And this is a Headline Future edition. It's in pretty good condition. It's obviously been read. It's a 1992 book. Again, in Archives Brisbane, they have quite a good science fiction and fantasy section. It's getting smaller than it used to be. I think more people are getting back into the older classics, like Let the Fire Fall by Kate Willem. I was really quite thrilled to see this one. I read Kate Willem's Where Late Sweet Birds Sang this year, and it made me really realise how appealing her writing is. Understated, but with exciting plots and characters that I really enjoyed. I definitely thought I needed more Willem, and I came across this. It is got a really beautiful piece of artwork. It's a wraparound cover. It's a panther science fiction, and in pretty good condition. It's obviously been read, but there's browning in the pages, but it's pretty good condition. I especially like the cover artwork in that you've got this image that's kind of suggestive of a spaceship, but without any of the details it would say definitely spaceship. It's kind of suggestive of a tower, and that whole blue and white palette makes you feel like ice. So I'm actually quite excited to see what this will be. Apparently it's an alien starship which landed in a cornfield with only one survivor. But I didn't even read the back too much. This one I went purely based on the author. Now I've got a beautiful little lozenged pan science fiction. It's in, well, again, in pretty good condition. The Road to Corley. I really love the artwork. Once again, I seem to be a sucker for artwork this month. But this author is one that I've read in the past and which I wanted more of. So I was quite keen to see quite a bit of his work on the shelf. I didn't buy too much. Everything that I was buying that day I was carrying, and that stopped me from walking out with a box full. Also the price tags. Science fiction, classic science fiction these days you can often pick up for about $5, but the prices in archives are always a little bit higher. Oh, no, we don't chew books. Who am I kidding? We chew books all the time, don't we? Yes. Now, Richard, how do you pronounce this? Cowper? I would have always pronounced that Richard Cowper, and I've read some of the work of this author before, but I've got a nasty feeling that it's actually pronounced Cooper. Now, I'd pronounce this Edmund Cooper and this Richard Cowper, but if I'm wrong, I'm sure there's people who are better at English than me, and I'm sure there's English watchers who would know better just in general. So let me know if I should be pronouncing this Cooper before I read it sometime. Very happy with that one. And from the possibly Cowper to the definitely Cooper, Edmund Cooper, an English author that I have been collecting for a while. I've had one or two of his books for a very long time that I've loved, Transit and Seahorse in the Sky. A few years ago, I started making a slightly more intentional, I want to collect more of his work and read it. The Uncertain Midnight is one that I am 99% certain I've never seen before and never read. It's a Coronet book, science fiction. It's been around a bit. It's got indications that it's been through a number of second-hand shops and a number of authors. It's not in great condition. And I do still really like the cover artwork, but it's got that Cooper-esque style to it. It is one of Cooper's atomic colorcast post-apocalyptic ones. He wrote those quite a lot, and it was copyright in 1958 by Ballantine Books. It's definitely going to be dated. Most of Edmund Cooper's work is, but that doesn't bother me. And now, ta-da-da-da! For the great find, again from Archives Bookshop, I came across this absolutely gorgeous little panther book. Edmund Cooper again. I didn't even know he wrote short stories. I don't think I've read any of his short stories before. If so, a long time ago. I believe that he was a difficult author and that a lot of publishers and other science fiction writers didn't like him. So it might simply be that he was never asked to collaborate too much. I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. But back to this panther book. There were about 4 Coopers that I didn't have and was tempted by. This one won out on the quality of the book itself, which isn't normally how it works. Tomorrow Came by Edmund Cooper. It's got that really dated, but I find them really appealing little cover with just so many stylistic choices that feel very dated. But I really like this little cutout here with the writing in it. Then you've got the spaceship down there, and then you've got the view from outer space there, just to really highlight that you've got having a science fiction experience ahead of you. The other thing about this panther is that up here it's got a little 4- Australia. So it's definitely an Australian book, which I feel is odd. Maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't seen very many that were specifically Australian, and this one says it specifically is. So that was exciting. It's in really good condition. Now, if you look on the inside, you'll see that the pages are a bit toasty. they've browned over the ages. And there's one area where there's obviously been a bit of a watermark. I don't know if you can see that. That's affected it. But other than that, this book is perfect. It shows no signs of having gone through multiple secondhand shops, except for the very gently penciled price that I came from Archives bookshop itself. They're pretty sensitive about the way they treat their books. My feeling about this book is that it was bought new by someone who had it sitting on their shelf in a reasonably atmosphere conditioned room for most of its life, and then it got sold to Archives. I feel like maybe it's been in Archives for a long time and I just never seen it before, because they've obviously reorganized recently, or maybe it's come from a deceased estate. There was virtually nothing, no marking on the spine either. It does now have a slight bulge, because as you can see from the ribbon, I couldn't wait for this one. I started reading the stories on the way back. I didn't have a book with me, and I was catching the train, so I've already started this. I'm undecided about how I'm going to review this. The stories are short. There's 12. I didn't know there were stories, by the way, when I first picked it up. I thought Tomorrow Came was early science fiction by Cooper that I hadn't heard of, but I don't care. I'm happy with stories. So there's 12 stories in many dimensions, as the foreword says, and this was first published in Panther Books in 1963, and it was copyright to Edmund Cooper in 1963. I'm going to guess that makes this the first edition. The first 3 or 4 stories that I've read, I have really, really enjoyed, and I'm undecided to how to review them. They're short, so doing a whole review for a whole short story, I'm not sure if that's the way to go. On the other hand, they are each one of them quite unique, so I'm still deciding about that. Let me know if you've got opinions. Those are my 2 book hauls of November, where everyone else is reading what they own. I too am reading what I own. I've had David Brin's Infinity War for some time, and I'm reading through that. A review will be forthcoming. And have a great day. Read good books, and remember, whatever book you enjoy is, at that point in time, a good book. Bye.